talk about before we move on to that. So layer 2 or second layer applications, right? So beyond the storage of value, now we're moving about use cases. And one of the things we've talked about and just scratch the surface is the Lightning Strike possibilities and uses of that. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that could disrupt financial transactions?
Yeah, I would start by saying that nothing beyond the store of value is necessary for Bitcoin to be extraordinarily valuable for the world, okay? Having said that, for the first time in history, we have an electronic bearer asset. We've never had one of those before. It's called Bitcoin. And we have an open source monetary network. We've never had one of those before either. It's also called Bitcoin. That together can achieve cash finality, meaning final settlement, anywhere in the world, anytime, any day, 24/7, 365, liquidity in any currency pair you care about. So let me explain the mechanics. Think about like the base layer of cash. Think about US dollars or like the base layer. Like I can give it to you, you can give it to me. There's no other, that is the settlement, that is final settlement. But if I write you a check, that's a second layer solution, or credit card might be third layer solution. So there's more and more abstractions of money from the base layer of cash. Bitcoin, the asset, is the base layer. There's something called Lightning, which is a second layer solution. Think of it like a check. It can, but it can move at light speed. And so an example of the mechanics are, I can today in New York turn my US dollars into Bitcoin. I can move them up to the Lightning Network. This is all in milliseconds. I can zip them anywhere in the world on Lightning Network at light speed. They are received that place in the world, and that place then can do an FX trade wherever it is, Bitcoin into dollars, if the receiver wants to receive dollars. So what's happened is you've moved fiat over Bitcoin rails. So it's a fiat to fiat transaction. You've done it instantly and for free, but for a tiny bit offer spread on the FX trades. There's no merchant fees. There's no interchange fees. There's no fees. There's no fees. It's a different set of rails. It's a totally new set of rails, instantly and for free.
And when can I use that?
So I'd say it's in, if Bitcoin itself is in the early innings, I'd say Lightning is like, Abner Doubleday still deciding how long the bases are going to be, like 60 feet, 65, 55. So it's like early design of baseball, right? If Bitcoin's in the early innings, but like they're playing the game. They're playing the game. And a great example of this, and this is not a game, this is as serious as life and death, is what's going on right now in El Salvador. So Strike, you mentioned Strike, Jack Mallers' firm. It's an incredible firm. What they're allowing people from the US who want to give remittances to people in El Salvador, I don't know if you know this, but 24% of the GDP in El Salvador is remittances. Mexico is 4%, to put in perspective, 24% of the GDP is remittances.
It's coming back home, yeah.
The country depends on it, right? So a housekeeper in New York sends $100 to her sister in El Salvador. Before Strike and before Lightning, the way that transaction worked, it would go through Western Union. The sister would go to Western Union in El Salvador. The $100 would turn into 60. The sister would have to be fearful of gangs hanging outside the Western Union. And what a lot of people don't realize is there aren't that many Western Unions in El Salvador. So the sister might have to drive 3 to 5 hours on a bus each way to get to the Western Union, to risk her life, to get the 60, not 100, okay? Now fast forward to today. What has Strike done with Lightning Labs? That sister takes her $100 in a Strike app, buys Bitcoin. That Bitcoin zips to El Salvador across the Lightning Network. Her sister gets it in El Salvador, does that FX trade instantly and for free in seconds. So $100 doesn't turn into 60, $100 turns into $99.8. There's no trip to Western Union to battle the gangs. There's no 10 hours on a bus and taking that day out of your life every single week just to survive. And a couple, 6-8 weeks ago, there were 10, 15 signups a day. There's 15 to 20,000 signups a day. So they're playing baseball. Wow. They're playing baseball. Yeah. It is changing lives every single day. And the notes from the El Salvadorians of like, I cannot believe I'm getting $99.8. I can't believe I'm not having to battle gangs. I can't believe I'm having to take 10 hours on a bus. It's beyond life-changing. That is chapter 2 of Bitcoin. So chapter 1 is what we've been talking about, Bitcoin, the asset. Chapter 2, which we're in the very, not even early innings in, we're designing the bases, is Bitcoin, the network. But that's a real concrete example today.
Got it. So I'm going to start aggregating some. There's a ton of questions here. I'm looking at this list. I'm going to aggregate some of these and ask the question. But